I'm Samantha, 32, and I've always been there for my younger sister Caitlin. I never imagined she would slap me across the face at her engagement party, with everyone watching. What she didn't know was that I had secretly paid $35,000 for her dream wedding venue. After that public humiliation, I made the hardest decision of my life and stopped my financial support. Before I dive into this painful family drama, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up for yourself against a loved one. Growing up in our middle-class home in Minneapolis, Minnesota, Caitlin and I shared more than just a bedroom. We shared secrets, dreams, and a bond one thought was unbreakable. The 6-year age gap between us naturally positioned me as her protector. I still remember her first day of kindergarten, her tiny hand clutching mine as I walked her to her classroom before heading to my own 6th grade class. Our childhood wasn't perfect, but it was stable until I turned 16 and Caitlin was 10. That's when the fighting between our parents became impossible to ignore. Late-night arguments echoed through our home, followed by tense, silent breakfasts where Dad would leave for work without kissing Mom goodbye. Within 8 months, our family fractured when they announced their divorce. Mom moved out first, finding an apartment across town. She was focused on rediscovering herself, which meant Caitlin and I saw her every other weekend. Dad kept the family home but buried himself in work to manage the mortgage payments. As the oldest, I stepped up, making sure Caitlin had breakfast each morning, helping with homework, and trying to maintain some normalcy. "Sam, is Mom ever coming back home?" Caitlin would ask, her voice small in the darkness of our room. "No, sweetie, but she still loves you very much." I'd respond, holding her until she fell asleep, despite having my own homework waiting. Those years shaped us both. I became the responsible one, the planner, the caretaker. I took part-time jobs throughout high school, saving what I could while still maintaining honor roll status. Meanwhile, Caitlin struggled with the divorce differently. She became more withdrawn, more dependent on my guidance and approval. When I left for college at the University of Minnesota, I chose to stay close to home, visiting every weekend to check on Caitlin. By then, Dad had started dating again, and his girlfriend Patricia didn't particularly connect with Caitlin. Those years were tough, balancing my studies in finance with being Caitlin's emotional support. I'd help her with high school applications, take her shopping for school dances, and counsel her through first crushes and friendship dramas. After college, I landed a job at a financial technology startup that eventually took off. By 28, I had financial stability many of my peers lacked. I had my own condo in downtown Minneapolis, a healthy investment portfolio, and the freedom to help Caitlin through college without her accumulating the student debt that crushed so many others. "You're literally my guardian angel," Caitlin told me when I helped her with her final semester's tuition. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Sam." Those words warmed my heart, but looking back, I should have noticed the pattern forming. Caitlin had grown accustomed to my help, often calling me first before trying to solve problems herself. When her car needed repairs, I covered it. When she wanted to travel to Florida with friends for spring break, I subsidized the trip. I never minded. Helping her brought me joy, and I had the means to do it. Everything changed when Caitlin met Bradley during her final year of college. She called me immediately after their first date, gushing about the handsome business major who'd taken her to an expensive restaurant and impressed her with stories about his family's connections. "He's different from anyone I've ever dated, Sam," she squealed over the phone. "His parents know everyone in the Minneapolis business world. His dad plays golf with the mayor." I was happy for her excitement but cautious. When I finally met Bradley 2 months later, I understood the appeal. He was conventionally attractive with perfectly styled dark hair and an easy smile. Dressed in designer clothes that screamed old money, he charmed our father with discussions about investment strategies and complimented Patricia on her taste in home decor. Yet something about Bradley left me uneasy. Behind his polished veneer, I sensed entitlement. He spoke about connections and opportunities but rarely about hard work. When Caitlin wasn't looking, I caught glimpses of impatience in his expression when service at restaurants wasn't instantaneous or when someone disagreed with him. As their relationship progressed, I noticed subtle changes in Caitlin. The sister who once wore thrift store finds proudly now complained about not having the right brands. The girl who loved indie concerts in small venues now only wanted to attend events where they might be seen by the right people. My down-to-earth sister was transforming into someone who measured worth by price tags and social media approval. Don't you think you're spending a bit much on clothes lately? I asked gently after watching her charge another $500 to her credit card for a designer purse. Bradley says appearance matters in his world, she replied, not meeting my eyes. I just want to fit in with his friends. By the time Bradley proposed after 18 months of dating, Caitlin had fully embraced his lifestyle despite not actually having the income to support it. The proposal was elaborately staged at an exclusive restaurant with a photographer hiding nearby to capture the moment for Instagram. The ring featured a diamond so large it looked costume-like on my sister's delicate hand. When she called me, screaming with excitement about the proposal, I forced enthusiasm into my voice while a knot formed in my stomach. We're thinking about a summer wedding, she gushed. Nothing too big, maybe just 150 people at one of those gorgeous lakeside estates. Oh Sam, I need your help planning everything. You're so good at organizing. Little did I know then just how much help she would expect, or what it would ultimately cost me, financially and emotionally. The day after the proposal, Caitlin created a wedding planning binder thick enough to require its own zip code. She filled it with magazine cutouts, color swatches, and printouts of wedding venues that looked like European castles. Gone was any pretense of a modest celebration. My sister wanted a wedding that belonged in a luxury bridal magazine. I'm thinking of a garden ceremony transitioning into a ballroom reception, Caitlin explained, flipping through her binder during our first official planning lunch. With hanging wisteria and crystal chandeliers. Something timeless but also totally Instagram-worthy. I nodded, trying to ignore the dollar signs multiplying in my head. Have you and Bradley discussed a budget? I asked carefully. Caitlin's smile faltered. Well, that's something I wanted to talk to you about. Bradley's parents aren't in a position to contribute much right now. I nearly choked on my water. Really? I thought his family was well connected and... I trailed off, not wanting to say wealthy outright. They are, but Mrs. Lancaster explained they have some investments tied up at the moment. And Bradley and I are just starting out in our careers. Caitlin reached across the table to grab my hand. Dad can help a little, but you know he's still paying off Patricia's medical bills from last year. I did know that. Dad's wife had required unexpected surgery, and even with insurance, the costs had strained their retirement savings. What about Bradley's salary? He's working at his father's company, right? I asked. He's still in a junior position, Caitlin explained, suddenly very interested in rearranging her napkin. They want him to earn his way up, you know? Something didn't add up. But before I could probe further, Caitlin's eyes welled with tears. I've dreamed about my wedding day since I was little, Sam. Remember how we used to use Mom's old curtains as veils and parade around the backyard? Her voice quivered. This is the one day I get to feel like a princess. I don't want to start my marriage in some budget venue with cash bars and paper decorations. And there it was, the emotional appeal that always worked on me. I reached for my sister's hand, squeezing it gently. Let's look at the numbers and see what we can do, I said, already knowing I'd end up covering more than I should. The venue hunting began the following weekend. We visited 5 locations, each more expensive than the last. Caitlin's reactions formed a predictable pattern, excitement upon arrival, followed by growing disappointment as she tallied the limitations against her vision, ending with quiet devastation when presented with the price. The 5th venue was the one that captured her heart, Lakeside Manor, a historic estate with manicured gardens overlooking Lake Minnetonka. It featured a stone terrace for ceremonies, a renovated ballroom with floor-to-ceiling windows, and exclusive use of the entire property for the weekend. This is it, Sam, Caitlin whispered as we stood on the terrace. I can see it all happening here. Then came the quote, $35,000 for the venue alone, not including catering, decorations, or any other services. Caitlin's face crumpled when the coordinator left us alone to discuss. It's too much, she said, voice small. I knew it was a fantasy. Seeing my sister's dreams dissolve before my eyes broke something in me. Without fully thinking through the implications, I heard myself say, what if I help with the venue cost? Caitlin's head snapped up. What? Sam, that's insane. It's so much money. Not all of it. I backpedaled, already recalculating my investment withdrawals in my head. But I could contribute significantly. You only get married once, right? The joy that spread across Caitlin's face in that moment, pure, unfiltered happiness, convinced me I was making the right decision. She threw her arms around me, crying happy tears. "You're the best sister anyone could ask for," she said. Her words muffled against my shoulder. Later that week, I met privately with Angela, the venue coordinator at Lakeside Manor. After explaining my situation, I made an unusual request. "I'd like to pay for the entire venue, but I don't want my sister to know the extent of my contribution," I explained. "Could we arrange it so that it appears she's paying a reduced rate?" Angela looked puzzled. "May I ask why?" I sighed, struggling to articulate my reasoning. "I want her to have her dream wedding, but I don't want her to feel indebted to me. And honestly, I think it's important for her and Bradley to have some financial responsibility for their wedding." After some discussion, we worked out an arrangement. I would pay the full $35,000. But Caitlin would believe the venue had offered a preferred client discount, bringing the cost down to $15,000, which I would help her cover. As the weeks passed and wedding planning intensified, I began to see a side of Caitlin I hadn't encountered before. The grateful sister was replaced by someone increasingly demanding and critical. She complained about vendor suggestions, dismissed budget alternatives, and expected me to be available for every appointment, even during my work hours. "Why can't you take Friday afternoon off?" She snapped when I explained I had an important client meeting during her cake tasting. "This is my wedding, Sam. It's important." "My job is important too," I replied, trying to keep frustration from my voice. "That's how I'm able to help with your wedding, remember?" She huffed but dropped the subject. These small moments of tension multiplied as the planning progressed. When I suggested silk flowers to save money, Caitlin accused me of trying to make her wedding look cheap. When I recommended a talented new photographer whose portfolio was impressive but whose rates were reasonable, she dismissed them as amateur. Bradley's involvement in planning was minimal, except when it came to adding to the extravagance. He suggested flying in a specific DJ from Chicago. He insisted the groomsmen needed custom-tailored suits rather than rentals. Each suggestion came without any offer to increase his financial contribution. "Bradley thinks we should have a raw bar during cocktail hour," Caitlin informed me one evening. His friend had one at his wedding, and Bradley says it was a huge hit. "That would add another $2,000 to the catering bill," I pointed out. Caitlin's expression hardened. "If we can't afford to do this wedding properly, maybe we shouldn't do it at all." That emotional manipulation became her go-to tactic. Any hesitation on my part was met with threats to cancel, postpone, or elope, followed by days of cold treatment until I relented. By the 3-month mark of planning, I had already spent over $40,000 between the venue deposit and various vendor retainers. My savings were taking a hit I hadn't fully anticipated. But I kept telling myself it was worth it to see my sister happy. The problem was Caitlin didn't seem happy. With each problem solved and each check written, her satisfaction lasted mere moments before a new, essential requirement emerged. I began to wonder if the perfect wedding she envisioned actually existed, or if the pursuit itself had become the point. 6 months before the wedding date, Caitlin decided an engagement party was absolutely necessary to, as she put it, formally announce our union to our social circle. What might have been a casual gathering at someone's home in the past had now evolved into another production requiring venue rentals, catering, and custom invitations. "The Langham Hotel has this beautiful private dining room," Caitlin said, showing me photos on her phone during one of our weekly planning sessions. "It's intimate but elegant. What's the cost?" I asked directly, having learned that circumventing the budget question only led to more expensive surprises later. $4,000 for the room rental and minimum food spend, she replied, quickly adding, "But Bradley's parents offered to contribute $1,000, and we thought maybe you could help with the rest? We'd handle the invitations and decorations." The assumption that I would cover 3/4 of the cost without being consulted beforehand irritated me, but I swallowed my frustration. This pattern had become so established that pushing back now seemed pointless. "I can contribute $1,500, I said firmly. "You and Bradley need to cover the rest." Caitlin's face registered momentary shock at my boundary setting before she recovered with a tight smile. "Of course. We appreciate anything you can do." Planning the engagement party introduced me to an expanded cast of characters in the wedding drama. Bradley's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Lancaster, were finally making an appearance after being mysteriously absent from previous planning discussions. I met them during a tasting at the hotel. Martin Lancaster had the same carefully cultivated charm as his son, with silver-streaked hair and a firm handshake that lingered a second too long. His wife, Diana, was a study in controlled elegance, from her perfectly highlighted blonde bob to her discreet but obviously expensive jewelry. "Samantha, we've heard so much about you," Diana said, air kissing near my cheeks. "Caitlin says you've been an absolute saint throughout the planning." "Just doing what sisters do," I replied modestly. "Well, not all sisters," Martin chuckled. "Bradley's sister Melissa wouldn't part with a dime unless it was for her own benefit." We were joined by my parents, who would be in the same room for the first time in years. Dad arrived with Patricia, both dressed nicely but visibly uncomfortable in the upscale setting. Mom came alone, wearing a new dress that I suspected had stretched her teacher's salary. The guest list expanded to include Bradley's best friend Tyler, who immediately struck me as even more entitled than Bradley. He spoke loudly about his recent trip to Monaco and made several comments about the hotel being adequate for the occasion. Caitlin's closest friends Jessica and Amanda were there too, both seemingly enchanted by Bradley's circle and eager to impress. Various extended family members and colleagues rounded out the group, creating a mix of people who might never have interacted if not for this union. My childhood friend Rachel, who would be my +1 for the actual event, couldn't make the tasting, leaving me without an ally. During the menu selection, I overheard a fragment of conversation between Diana and another woman I didn't recognize. "The contractor says the boat dock renovation should be finished before summer," Diana was saying, "just in time for us to enjoy the lake house season properly." I paused, glass halfway to my lips. Lake house renovations? This didn't align with the story of financial limitations Caitlin had conveyed. Later, when Diana excused herself to the restroom, I followed, catching her as she washed her hands. "The food selections are wonderful," I commented casually. "Caitlin mentioned you have a lake house?" "That sounds lovely." Diana brightened. "Oh yes. Our place on Lake Minnetonka. It's been in Martin's family for generations. We just decided to update the boat dock and add a second guest cabin. Nothing major. But construction costs are so ridiculous these days." My stomach tightened. The Lancasters were spending freely on vacation property renovations, while claiming they couldn't contribute to their only son's wedding. I returned to the table, watching Bradley's parents with new awareness. Throughout the tasting, they made casual references to their country club membership, their plans to visit their timeshare in Cabo, and the new luxury SUV Martin was considering. The disconnect was jarring. Either they were living far beyond their means, or the story about being unable to contribute significantly to the wedding was fabricated. Neither option settled well with me. That evening, I debated whether to share my observations with Caitlin. Would she be receptive, or would she see it as an attack on Bradley and his family? Our relationship had grown increasingly strained throughout the planning process, and I worried this might be the wedge that drove us further apart. I decided to wait until after the engagement party, perhaps in the relaxed atmosphere following a successful event. I could broach the subject gently. As the engagement party approached, my involvement intensified. Despite only contributing $1,500, I found myself handling most of the coordination, confirming details with the hotel, creating seating arrangements, and helping Caitlin select appropriate decorations. Nothing too bridal. She instructed. "This isn't the wedding, but still elegant and photo-worthy." I arranged for a photographer, a small floral budget, and custom cocktail napkins with Caitlin and Bradley's initials. My credit card saw even more action as Caitlin convinced me that certain small upgrades were essential. The night before the engagement party, I barely slept. Something felt off about the entire situation, but I couldn't pinpoint exactly what. Was it Bradley's casual disregard for costs he wasn't covering? Was it the Lancasters' apparent wealth contrasted with their minimal contribution? Or was it deeper, the growing realization that my sister had changed in ways that made her almost unrecognizable to me? Whatever it was, I pushed the unease aside as I got ready the next morning. Today was about celebrating Caitlin's happiness, I reminded myself. Everything else could wait. The Langham Hotel's private dining room transformed beautifully for the engagement party. Soft lighting from crystal sconces cast a warm glow over tables adorned with white roses and silver accents. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the hotel's manicured gardens, and a string quartet played quietly in the corner. I had arrived 2 hours early to oversee the final preparations, ensuring everything was perfect for Caitlin's special day. Guests began arriving at 6, offering congratulations and complimenting the elegant setting. I circulated among them, playing the role of proud sister and unofficial hostess, directing people to the bar and encouraging them to sign the custom guest book I had ordered. "You've outdone yourself," my father said, appearing at my elbow with a glass of whiskey already in hand. "This place looks like something out of a magazine." "Thanks, Dad," I replied, straightening his slightly crooked tie. "How are things with the seating? Is Mom behaving herself?" He chuckled. "So far, so good. Patricia and your mother are maintaining a polite distance. No drama yet. Let's hope it stays that way," I said, spotting Mom across the room, engaged in animated conversation with one of Caitlin's college friends. Bradley's parents made their entrance like minor royalty. Diana Lancaster in a designer dress I recognized from the latest spring collection, adorned with jewelry that certainly wasn't costume. They moved through the crowd with practiced ease, Martin clapping shoulders and Diana air-kissing cheeks, both exuding the confidence of people accustomed to being the center of attention. "Samantha, darling," Diana cooed when she reached me. "Everything looks splendid. You must have gone to so much trouble." "It was my pleasure," I said, forcing a smile. "Caitlin deserves the best." "Indeed she does," Diana agreed, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "Though between us, I think Bradley could have done well with someone from a more established family. But love is love, isn't it?" Before I could process the backhanded insult to my family, she glided away, leaving me speechless in her wake. At 6:30, a hush fell over the room as Caitlin and Bradley made their entrance. My sister looked stunning in a white cocktail dress that highlighted her slender figure, her hair arranged in an elegant updo. Bradley, ever the perfect complement, wore a tailored navy suit with a tie that matched the exact shade of blue in the party decorations. They paused in the doorway, allowing guests to admire them and the photographer to capture the moment. I moved toward them, arms outstretched for a welcoming hug, but Caitlin barely acknowledged me. Her eyes scanned the room critically, assessing the decorations, the flowers, the placement of the gift table. When her gaze finally landed on me, there was none of the warmth I expected. "The roses are cream, not white like I specified," she said quietly, her smile never faltering for the watching guests. "And I thought we agreed on the champagne being served immediately upon our arrival?" "They're bringing it now," I assured her, gesturing to the servers who were indeed approaching with trays of filled flutes. "And the florist sent cream roses because they complement the linens better. Remember we discussed that?" She didn't respond, already turning away to greet Bradley's parents with an enthusiasm she hadn't shown me. I stood awkwardly for a moment before retreating to help distribute the champagne. The evening progressed with toasts, laughter, and the expected mingling. On the surface, everything appeared perfect. The food was delicious, the music appropriate, the ambience exactly what Caitlin had wanted. Yet there was an undercurrent of tension I couldn't ignore. Bradley took the microphone after dinner, glass raised. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight to celebrate our engagement. Caitlin and I are overwhelmed by your support and love." He paused, his practiced smile widening. "We're especially excited to announce that we've secured the magnificent lakeside manor for our wedding venue. It's exclusive, it's stunning, and it's exactly what my bride deserves." Applause rippled through the room. I clapped along automatically, even as Bradley's words grated on me. He spoke as if securing the venue had been his accomplishment, with no acknowledgement of who had actually made it possible. "Of course, a venue like that comes with a price tag to match its prestige," he continued with a wink. "But as I always say, the best things in life are worth every penny. And speaking of pennies, we're grateful for all contributions to our wedding fund. Every little bit helps us create the day of our dreams." Was it my imagination, or did his eyes flicker briefly in my direction? Heat crept up my neck as several guests glanced my way too. Had Caitlin been discussing my financial support with others? After the toasts, I retreated to a quiet corner, needing a moment away from the performance aspect of the evening. That's when I overheard Bradley talking to his friend Tyler near the bar, their voices slightly elevated by alcohol. "Man, you're set," Tyler was saying. "Nice venue locked in, and Big Sis footing a chunk of the bill. Smart play." Bradley laughed. "Caitlin knows how to work her sister. Always has, according to her. Flash some tears, mention childhood memories, and the checkbook comes out." "And your parents?" They still playing the tight budget card. As long as it keeps working. Dad says there's no reason to drain our accounts when Samantha's so willing to open hers. Their laughter felt like a physical blow. I stepped back, bumping into a server and causing glasses to clink loudly. Bradley and Tyler turned, spotting me. A flash of something, guilt? Concern? Crossed Bradley's face before his mask of charm slipped back into place. Samantha, we were just talking about how amazing everything looks. You've outdone yourself, he said smoothly. I didn't respond, turning away as anger and hurt churned inside me. Finding a quiet moment to speak with Caitlin became my priority. This couldn't continue, not the deception, not the manipulation, not the disrespect. I found her near the dessert table, admiring the engagement cake I'd specially ordered from her favorite bakery. Caitlin, can we talk privately for a minute? I asked quietly. She glanced around, clearly reluctant to step away from her guests. Is it urgent? We're about to cut the cake. It won't take long, I insisted, guiding her toward a small alcove near the entrance. Once relatively private, I took a deep breath. I overheard something concerning just now. About Bradley's family finances. Caitlin's expression immediately hardened. What are you talking about? His mother mentioned lake house renovations. And Bradley was just joking with Tyler about his parents pretending to be on a tight budget while I pay for everything. I kept my voice gentle but firm. Caitlin, if they're not being honest about their ability to contribute. Are you serious right now? She interrupted, her voice rising slightly. You're what, spying on my future in-laws? Counting their money? No, I'm just concerned that. That what? That you're being taken advantage of. Her eyes flashed dangerously. Or maybe you're just jealous that I'm marrying into a family with connections and class while you're still single at 32. The accusation stung like ice water. This has nothing to do with me being single. This is about honesty and respect. I've contributed over $40,000 to your wedding already. Which you offered, she hissed. Nobody forced you to help. If you didn't want to, you should have said so instead of playing the martyr now. I'm not playing anything, I said, struggling to keep my composure. I just think we need to have an honest conversation about expectations and contributions. If Bradley's family can afford lake house renovations, surely they can help more with the wedding. Something in Caitlin snapped. Her face contorted with rage I'd never seen directed at me before. You don't know anything about their finances or obligations. You're trying to ruin this for me because you can't stand that I'm happy. Caitlin, that's not true at all. I just want... The crack of her palm against my cheek echoed in the sudden silence that had fallen around us. I staggered backward, hand flying to my face in shock. The sting of the slap was nothing compared to the public humiliation as I realized many guests had turned to witness our confrontation. How dare you try to make this night about you? Caitlin said loudly, no longer attempting to keep our discussion private. You've always been jealous of me, always trying to control me by holding your help over my head. Tears sprang to my eyes. Not from physical pain but from the emotional wound that felt like it might never heal. Faces turned toward us, some shocked, others uncomfortably averting their gaze. A few even nodding along with Caitlin's accusations. I searched for any ally in the crowd and found none, not even our parents who stood frozen in disbelief. Without another word, I grabbed my purse from the nearby coat check and fled the room. Behind me, I heard Bradley's smooth voice already working to diffuse the situation. Just a little sister drama. He was saying with a forced laugh. You know how emotional wedding planning can get. Let's move on to the cake cutting, shall we? I pushed through the hotel's revolving door into the cool night air, my cheek burning and tears flowing freely now. In that moment, something fundamental had broken between Caitlin and me. Something I wasn't sure could ever be repaired. The drive home passed in a blur. My body on autopilot while my mind replayed the slap in an endless loop. Street lights streaked past as tears clouded my vision, forcing me to pull over twice to compose myself. By the time I reached my condo, my face was swollen from crying, and a dull ache had settled behind my eyes. I kicked off my heels at the door and collapsed onto my couch, still in my party dress. The silence of my apartment felt deafening after the chaos of the evening. My phone, which I'd silenced during the drive, began buzzing with notifications. I hesitated before looking at the screen. 3 missed calls from Rachel, 2 text messages from my father, and 1 from my mother. Nothing from Caitlin. Rachel's text read, "Just heard what happened from Jessica." Are you okay? Call me ASAP. Dad's message was supportive but cautious, checking in on you, kiddo. That was quite a scene. I'm here if you need to talk. Mom's text made my stomach clench. You should apologize to your sister. Whatever disagreement you had, her engagement party wasn't the place. She's devastated. Devastated? Caitlin was devastated? A hysterical laugh escaped me, edged with bitterness. I had been publicly humiliated, my character assassinated, my financial support taken for granted, and somehow I was the villain in this story? I tossed the phone aside without responding to anyone. Tomorrow would be soon enough to deal with the fallout. Tonight, I needed to process what had happened and what it meant for my relationship with my sister. Sleep eluded me, and I found myself scrolling through social media at 3 a.m, a decision I immediately regretted. The engagement party was already thoroughly documented online. Bradley had posted professional photos with a caption thanking everyone for an unforgettable evening celebrating our love. Caitlin had shared similar images, carefully curated to show only joyful moments. There wasn't a single photograph that included me, despite my central role in making the event happen. Comments flooded both posts, congratulating the happy couple and remarking on how perfect everything had been. I wondered how many of those commenters had witnessed Caitlin slapping me, and how quickly they had decided to forget that particular detail. As dawn broke, my phone buzzed with a new message. From Caitlin, finally. I'm sorry you made me upset last night. You know how important this time is for me, and bringing up money issues during my party was inappropriate. I hope you can reflect on your behavior and we can move forward. We still have so much wedding planning to do. I stared at the message, reading and rereading it in disbelief. This wasn't an apology. It was a deflection, placing the blame squarely on my shoulders while simultaneously reminding me of my obligations to continue helping with her wedding. For the first time, I saw with perfect clarity what our relationship had become. The sister I had protected and supported had come to view my help not as generosity but as an entitlement. My role had been reduced to financial provider and logistics coordinator, with no acknowledgement of my feelings or boundaries. Rachel called around 9, and I finally answered. Oh my God, Sam. She said immediately. Jessica told me everything. Are you okay? Physically or emotionally? I asked with a weak laugh. Both. Either. Just talk to me. I recounted the entire evening, the overheard conversations, the confrontation, the slap, and finally, Caitlin's non-apology text. That's not an apology, Rachel said firmly when I finished. That's manipulation, pure and simple. I know, I sighed. The thing is, I'm not even surprised anymore. This has been building for months. Years maybe. What are you going to do about the wedding? About the money you've already spent? The question hung in the air. What was I going to do? I had committed to covering the venue $35,000 already paid in full. There were also deposits for various vendors, extras I'd covered to ease Caitlin's stress, and the engagement party expenses. All told, I had invested over $40,000 in a wedding that was still 6 months away. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to just write it off as an expensive lesson in boundaries. But another part wants to stand up for yourself, Rachel finished for me. And you should, Sam. You've been Caitlin's safety net for so long that she doesn't even see she's falling anymore. Maybe it's time to let her feel the ground. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a notepad, methodically listing all the wedding expenses I had covered and all the commitments I had made. The total was staggering, especially when I calculated what those funds could have done in my investment accounts over the next decade. But this wasn't just about money. It was about respect, honesty, and the painful recognition that my relationship with Caitlin had become unhealthy. I had enabled her dependent behavior, and in doing so had helped create the entitlement she now displayed. My father called around noon. How's your face? He asked after I answered. The mark faded, I replied. My pride is more bruised than my cheek. He sighed heavily. I've never seen Caitlin act like that before. I didn't raise either of you to resolve conflicts with physical violence. You didn't, I agreed. But Dad, this isn't just about last night. This is about a pattern that's been developing for years. I've been supporting Caitlin financially and emotionally without any real boundaries, and it's created an unhealthy dynamic. I know, he said softly. I've worried about that. After the divorce, you stepped up in ways you shouldn't have had to. You became more parent than sister to her. The observation hit home. I never minded helping her. I still don't. But I can't keep pouring resources into someone who sees me as an ATM rather than a person with feelings. So what are you thinking of doing? I took a deep breath. I'm considering withdrawing my financial support for the wedding. All of it. There was a long pause before he responded. That's a big move, Sam. Have you thought about what that might do to your relationship with her? What relationship? I asked bluntly. The one where I give and she takes? The one where she can slap me in public and then blame me for it? That's not a relationship worth preserving. After talking with my father, I spent the afternoon researching my options. The venue contract was in my name since I had paid the deposit. I could cancel, but I would lose the non-refundable portion. A significant sum, but less than continuing with the full payment. By evening, I had made my decision. It wouldn't be easy, and it would likely create a permanent rift between Caitlin and me. But continuing as things were would only reinforce the toxic patterns we had established. With trembling fingers, I composed an email to Angela, the venue coordinator at Lakeside Manor. I requested a meeting for the following day to discuss changes to the contract. Then I blocked Caitlin's number on my phone, knowing I needed time to strengthen my resolve before confronting her. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in months. The decision had been made. Now I just needed the courage to follow through. Angela greeted me with a warm smile when I arrived at Lakeside Manor the next morning. Her office overlooked the gardens where Caitlin had envisioned her ceremony. Spring flowers now beginning to bloom where wedding guests would have stood. Samantha, it's good to see you, she said, gesturing to a chair across from her desk. Your email mentioned you wanted to discuss some changes to the contract? I settled into the seat, hands clasped tightly in my lap to stop their trembling. Yes, I'm afraid this is rather difficult, but I need to withdraw my financial support for my sister's wedding. Angela's expression shifted from professional friendliness to concern. I see. May I ask what prompted this decision? For a moment, I considered giving a vague explanation. Personal reasons, financial changes, but something in Angela's gentle demeanor invited honesty. My sister and I had a significant falling out, I explained, voice wavering slightly. She's unaware that I've been covering the entire cost of the venue. She believes there was a special discount and that I'm only helping with part of the reduced price. I remember our arrangement, Angela nodded. This puts us in a difficult position. Contractually speaking. I understand. I've reviewed the contract carefully. I'm prepared to forfeit the non-refundable deposit. But I wanted to discuss the possibility of canceling the remaining balance. Angela tapped her pen thoughtfully against her notepad. The deposit covers our opportunity costs for holding the date. But we typically require 60 days notice for cancellation without additional penalties. The wedding is still 6 months away, I pointed out. That should provide ample time for you to book another event. True, she conceded. Those summer dates are our premium season. We negotiated for nearly an hour, eventually reaching an agreement that felt fair to both parties. I would lose the $10,000 deposit but wouldn't be responsible for the remaining balance. Lakeside Manor would immediately release the date for other bookings. There's one more thing, I said as Angela prepared the paperwork. I'd like you to be the one to inform my sister that the venue is no longer available. I know that's asking a lot, but I think it would be better coming from you as a business matter rather than from me. Angela hesitated. That's an unusual request. Normally, we would expect the contract holder to have that conversation. I understand, but given the circumstances. I trailed off, unsure how to explain the complexity of the situation without sounding petty or vindictive. There was an incident, I finally said. At the engagement party, my sister physically assaulted me in front of guests when I questioned why her fiancé's supposedly wealthy family wasn't contributing more to the wedding. She doesn't know I paid for the entire venue. Finding out from me would only escalate an already volatile situation. Angela's professional demeanor softened. I'm very sorry that happened to you. That certainly changes things. She thought for a moment. I can inform her that there have been changes to the contract that require immediate attention. I won't specify what those changes are, but I'll make it clear that the current arrangements have been altered and she needs to contact you. It wasn't exactly what I wanted, but it was a reasonable compromise. Thank you. I appreciate your understanding. As I signed the cancellation paperwork, a weight lifted from my shoulders even as a new heaviness settled in my heart. This was the right decision financially and emotionally, but that didn't make it painless. I had barely returned to my condo when my phone exploded with notifications. Caitlin was calling repeatedly. The calls breaking through even though I had blocked her number. She must have been using someone else's phone. Text messages followed in rapid succession. What the hell is going on with our venue? Angela just called saying there are contract issues and the wedding can't proceed as planned? Answer your phone right now. I'm coming to your place if you don't call me back in 5 minutes. I took a deep breath and called her back, putting the phone on speaker so I could pace my living room during what I knew would be a difficult conversation. She answered immediately. What did you do? Her voice was shrill with panic and anger. I've withdrawn my financial support for the wedding, I said as calmly as I could. Including the venue. You what? The volume of her shriek made me wince. You can't do that. We have a contract. No, Caitlin. I had a contract. The venue was in my name because I paid for it. All of it. Not just the portion I told you about. There was a moment of confused silence before she spoke again. What are you talking about? We got a preferred client discount. You were helping with part of the reduced cost. There was no discount, I explained, keeping my voice level. I paid the full $35,000 and asked Angela to tell you it was discounted so you wouldn't know the extent of my contribution. $35,000? Her voice had dropped to a whisper. The whole thing. Yes. And that's just the venue. I've spent over $40,000 total on your wedding so far. Not including my time and emotional labor. The line went quiet except for the sound of her breathing. I waited, giving her time to process what I had just revealed. Why? She finally asked. Why would you pay all that and not tell me? Because I love you, Caitlin. Because I wanted you to have your dream wedding. Because I've spent my entire life trying to protect you and make you happy. I swallowed hard. But after what happened at the engagement party, I've realized our relationship has become unhealthy. I've been enabling your entitled behavior, and you've been taking advantage of my generosity. This is about the slap? Her voice hardened again. I already apologized for that. No, you didn't. I countered firmly. You blamed me for making you upset. That's not an apology. And it's not just about the slap, it's about the pattern of behavior. It's about you and Bradley laughing behind my back about how easy it is to manipulate me into paying for things. It's about his parents renovating their lake house while claiming they can't contribute to your wedding. You were eavesdropping on private conversations, she deflected. I overheard the truth. I corrected her. And now I'm acting on it. There was a shift in her tone then, the anger giving way to panic. Sam, please. You can't do this to me. The wedding is in 6 months. We'll lose all our deposits. We can't afford to book another venue like Lakeside Manor. I'm sorry about that, I said, meaning it despite everything. But this isn't my responsibility anymore. What am I supposed to tell everyone? Our friends? Bradley's family? They all know we booked Lakeside Manor. Her voice cracked with genuine distress. Tell them the truth, I suggested. That your sister was covering costs she couldn't afford and had to withdraw. Or tell them whatever you want. That's up to you now. A new voice came on the line, Bradley. His smooth tone now edged with thinly veiled anger. Samantha, let's be reasonable here. I understand you and Caitlin had a disagreement, but punishing her by canceling the venue is extreme. Perhaps we could meet and discuss this like adults. His condescension ignited a fresh wave of indignation. There's nothing to discuss, Bradley. And this isn't punishment, it's a consequence. Actions have those, as you're both discovering. My parents will be furious, he said, dropping any pretense of charm. They've already told their friends about the wedding location. Your parents, I replied coldly, have a lovely lake house they're renovating. Perhaps they could host the wedding there, or contribute some of their apparently flexible funds toward a new venue. I heard muffled conversation on their end before Caitlin came back on the line, her voice now tear-filled and pleading. Sam, I'm sorry. Really sorry. About everything. The slap, the things I said. Taking you for granted. Please don't do this. I'll apologize properly in person in front of everyone if you want. The desperation in her voice tugged at my heart. But I reminded myself that this pattern had played out countless times before. Caitlin would apologize when she needed something, only to revert to entitled behavior once she got it. I appreciate that you're sorry, I said gently. But my decision is final. I've already signed the cancellation paperwork. What followed was a barrage of emotional manipulation tactics I recognized all too well. Tears, accusations of betrayal, reminders of our childhood bond. Threats that our relationship would never recover. When those didn't work, Caitlin switched to threats. "Dad will be disgusted with you for abandoning me like this," she claimed. "I've already spoken with Dad," I informed her. "He understands my position, even if he doesn't fully agree with it." Finally, when all else failed, she resorted to insults. "This is why you're alone, you know. This selfish, controlling behavior. This is why no man wants to commit to you." That cut deep, but I refused to engage. "I think we've said all there is to say for now. I'm going to hang up, Caitlin. I hope you and Bradley figure things out. Don't you dare hang up on me. This isn't over." I ended the call and immediately blocked the number she was calling from. Within minutes, my phone began ringing again, different numbers. Likely borrowed from friends or called from various locations. I silenced my phone entirely and sent a quick text to my father and Rachel, letting them know what had happened and that I was taking some space from communication for a while. Over the next week, the harassment escalated. Caitlin showed up at my workplace, causing a scene in the lobby until security escorted her out. She sent mutual friends to reason with me. Bradley's father even called my boss, attempting to leverage business connections to pressure me, a move that backfired when my boss, aware of the situation, firmly told him such behavior was inappropriate. The family split into factions. My father tried to remain neutral while acknowledging my right to set boundaries. My mother fully sided with Caitlin, sending me lengthy emails about family obligation and sisterly duty. Extended relatives chose sides based on their own relationships and values, some supporting my stance on boundaries, others condemning what they saw as cruelty toward my younger sister. Through it all, I maintained my position. The venue was canceled. The financial support was withdrawn. The decades-long pattern of enabling was broken, even as the relationship between Caitlin and me seemed irreparably damaged. After 2 weeks of constant attempts to contact me, I finally blocked Caitlin's number completely and informed friends and family that I needed space to process everything. The wedding was no longer my concern, and whatever decisions Caitlin and Bradley made going forward would be theirs alone to make and to fund. 3 months passed like a slow exhale. Spring blossomed into summer, and with the changing seasons came a gradual healing in my own life. The first month after withdrawing from Caitlin's wedding had been the hardest, fielding concerned calls from relatives, second-guessing my decision during sleepless nights, jumping whenever my doorbell rang unexpectedly. I threw myself into work, finding solace in the structured problems of finance that had clear solutions unlike the messy emotions of family dynamics. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Winters, who helped me understand the codependent patterns I'd developed with Caitlin and how to establish healthier boundaries in all my relationships. "You've been parenting your sister for most of your life," Dr. Winters observed during one session. "It's natural that breaking that pattern feels like a loss, even when it's necessary." I also rediscovered parts of myself that had been neglected, while I focused on Caitlin's needs. I joined a hiking group that explored Minnesota's beautiful state parks each weekend. I took a pottery class where I created lopsided but charming mugs. I reconnected with college friends who had drifted away during the all-consuming wedding planning period. Rachel remained my steadfast ally, checking in regularly and distracting me with movie nights when memories of Caitlin became particularly painful. During one such evening, as we shared takeout Thai food on my couch, she mentioned hearing news about my sister. "Jessica said they've dramatically downsized the wedding," Rachel said cautiously, watching for my reaction. "They're having it at Bradley's parents' country club now. Much smaller guest list, simplified everything." I nodded, surprised by how little the information affected me. That makes sense. It's a practical solution. Apparently Bradley's parents suddenly found room in their budget to contribute, Rachel added with a pointed look. I couldn't help but laugh at the irony. "Amazing how that works. Do you regret it?" she asked gently. "Withdrawing the money?" I considered the question carefully. I regret that it came to that point. I regret not setting boundaries earlier. But the decision itself? No. It was necessary for both of us, honestly. As the original wedding date approached, I braced myself for renewed contact from Caitlin, perhaps a last-ditch attempt to secure my financial support again. But nothing came. through the grapevine of mutual friends. I heard the scaled-back wedding plans were proceeding without drama. Part of me was relieved. Another part felt the strange ache of being unnecessary after years of being essential to my sister's life. Then on a rainy Tuesday evening in June, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a moment I considered not answering. Peering through the peephole, I froze at the sight of Caitlin standing in my hallway, alone and without the defensive anger I'd come to expect. I opened the door cautiously. Caitlin. She looked different, more subdued, dressed in simple jeans and a sweater rather than the carefully curated outfits she'd adopted since meeting Bradley. Her hair was pulled back in a casual ponytail and she wore minimal makeup. "Hi, Sam," she said softly. "Can I come in? Just to talk. I promise I'm not here to fight or ask for anything." I hesitated before stepping aside to let her enter. We moved to the living room, an uncomfortable silence settling between us as we sat on opposite ends of the couch. "You look good," she offered, glancing around the apartment. "You changed things around in here." "Thanks." "Yes, I rearranged some furniture, bought some new art." I gestured to a ceramic bowl on the coffee table. "Made that in a pottery class." Caitlin picked it up, examining it with a small smile. "It's nice. Very practical but with personality." Another silence fell, heavier this time. Finally, Caitlin set the bowl down and turned to face me directly. "I owe you an apology," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. "A real one this time. I was horrible to you. Not just at the engagement party but for months. Years, really." I remained quiet, giving her space to continue. "When you withdrew the venue payment, I was furious. I said terrible things about you to anyone who would listen." She looked down at her hands. "But then we had to actually deal with the reality of planning a wedding within our means, and it was illuminating." "How so?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Bradley's parents suddenly offered to host it at their country club, at a family discount," she said with air quotes. "They could have done that all along, but they didn't until they had to. And Bradley." She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. "Let's just say I saw a different side of him when we couldn't have everything exactly as he wanted it." "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. "That must have been difficult." She shrugged. "It was actually clarifying. Made me realize how I'd been doing the same thing to you. Taking and taking without appreciation until you finally said no." "The wedding is still happening, though?" I asked. Caitlin nodded. 2 weeks from Saturday. It's smaller, simpler, but honestly, it feels more us now. Or at least more the person I want to be rather than the person I was becoming. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope, extending it toward me. "I'm not here to ask you to pay for anything. I'm here to give you this." I opened it to find a check for $15,000. "It's not the full amount you spent," Caitlin explained quickly. "I know you paid much more. But it's what I've managed to save so far. I'll pay back the rest over time, I promise." I stared at the check in disbelief. Where did this come from? I got a better job. I've been working extra hours. And I sold a lot of the designer stuff I bought trying to fit in with Bradley's crowd. She smiled ruefully. "Turns out I don't need $400 shoes to be happy." "Caitlin." I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. You don't even have to accept it right now. But I needed you to know that I understand what I did and I'm trying to make it right. She hesitated before adding, "I also wanted to invite you to the wedding. Not as my financial backer or even as my maid of honor. Those ships have sailed. Just as my sister if you want to come." The invitation hung between us, weighted with all the hurt and history of the past year. Part of me wanted to decline to protect the healing I'd begun. But another part recognized the genuine change in Caitlin's approach. "I'll think about it," I said honestly. "I can't promise anything right now." She nodded, accepting this without argument, another sign of growth. "That's fair. The invitation is open, whatever you decide." We talked for another hour, cautiously at first, then with increasing openness. She told me about the realizations she'd had while scaling back the wedding, about conversations with our father that had made her reflect on her behavior. About therapy she had started to address her own issues with entitlement and dependency. When she finally rose to leave, something had shifted between us. The relationship wasn't repaired. Too much had happened for an instant reconciliation, but a door had been opened that I had thought permanently closed. "Sam," she said as she stood in my doorway. "Thank you." For what? For stopping. For making me face reality. It hurt, God, it hurt so much, but I needed it. 2 weeks later, I found myself sitting in a country club garden, watching my sister walk down a petal-strewn aisle in a simple but elegant dress. The wedding was indeed smaller, perhaps 60 guests instead of the original 150, but there was an authenticity to it that the grander plans had lacked. I wasn't in the wedding party, and that felt right for where our relationship stood. I was there as an observer, a family member taking tentative steps toward reconciliation. Bradley's parents nodded politely when they saw me, any animosity carefully concealed beneath social veneers. My mother remained somewhat cold, still believing I had abandoned my sisterly duties, while my father squeezed my hand supportively throughout the ceremony. At the reception, Caitlin found a moment to come to my table. "Thank you for coming," she said, genuine gratitude in her eyes. "It was a beautiful ceremony," I replied. "You look happy." "I am. Not because of the wedding or the venue or any of the things I thought mattered, but because I'm starting to figure out who I am without." She trailed off, but I understood. Without using people. Without manipulating situations. Without the constant validation of extravagance. "It's a journey," I said. "For both of us." She nodded, then was called away by her new husband for photos. I watched her go, feeling a complex mixture of emotions, pride in her growth, lingering hurt from the past, cautious hope for our future. Our relationship would never be what it once was. The innocent trust of childhood had been replaced by something more measured, more conscious. We would need to rebuild slowly, establishing new patterns based on mutual respect rather than dependency. But as I watched Caitlin laughing with her new husband, authentic joy lighting her face, I realized something important. Sometimes the deepest love we can show is not by giving everything that's asked of us, but by setting boundaries that allow others to find their own strength. In withdrawing my financial support, I had given my sister something far more valuable than money. The opportunity to stand on her own, to discover her resilience, to become someone who didn't need to use others as crutches. And in that painful process, I had found my own voice too, learning that self-respect isn't selfish, that boundaries aren't cruel, and that true relationships can weather honest confrontation. As I prepared to leave the reception, Caitlin caught my eye across the room and smiled, a simple gesture that carried the weight of understanding. We had a long road ahead of us, but for the first time in months, I believed we might actually walk it together. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice to withdraw support from someone you love? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. How did you navigate that challenging terrain between helping and enabling? If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more real-life lessons about family, boundaries, and the courage to stand up for yourself even when it hurts. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, sometimes the most loving thing we can do is allow others to face the consequences of their own choices.